Hello, I'm heytrix. With TBC finally out after 1 year, we now have access to the cooldown Avenging Wrath from Paladin. Why is this ability so important? It's because Ascension just added a lot of supporting skills and talents for a new archetype called basically Arcane Paladin, and that was the last piece to make it work, but we needed TBC for it. Earlier today, I just rolled the last core talent to finally show the build. Without it, it would be such a scuffed version. So now I can, finally show this build running in the background. There will be timestamps in the description, and if there will be any major update, I'll pin it in the top comment. So in this video, I will run over how the build works, the mistakes I made, what abilities I'm missing, and my plan how to finish the build. Let's get into it. First thing first, let me get ahead of the comments. What you see in the background, I get this question a lot. It's not a weak hour, thus it's looking like it. It's an add-on called Tell Me When. If I can find the link, I'll put it in the description, but you can probably just search it up and you will have to find a version for 3.35 ref client. Another thing you can see in the background with me doing 24k DPS. Keep in mind that we are 2 days into TBC, so my gear is far from optimized and is basically just Paladin pieces from Mana Storm, and those pieces from Mana Storm is from the dungeons and basically heroic dungeons right now. Before going into and talk about the rotation, here's an overview of my current damage breakdown. Right now, I'm not sure how much I should be pressing arcane missiles compared to the other buttons, and I think I need more spell crit because spell crit really helps this build. It has a lot of spell crit damage and benefits a lot from it. So let me break down the abilities, talent, and how the build work. I'll try to explain it as simple as possible because it will very quickly become a lot. I'll also suggest go back and watch the rotation before and see if you can weave it together. Let me start by, if you're new to Paladin and how it works in Ascension, you have Crusader Strike and Divine Storm on cooldowns, and whenever we press Crusader Strike or Divine Storm, we will be proccing our Paladin seal. It will also proc from random auto attacks, but you can see here we have 5 hits. Now 6, I'm pressing Crusader Strike and we're getting hits all the time. So this seal is basically like a normal seal, but it's just arcane damage, and there's some of the new talent that benefits from it. The other basic Paladin talents that we use for the build before going into the new stuff is the Art of War. Notice on this is that it has to be 3 out of 3. It's very important. If you don't have this, it will have a cast time on the exorcism, in this case Arcane Blast. So Art of War, whenever you auto attack or Crusader Strike, you will get Art of War, and normally it will reduce the cast time of exorcism, making it insta cast. In our case, it will instead be Arcane Blast. So as you see here, I get a free insta cast of Arcane Blast, and that proc trigger this one, Sanctity of Battle. I can do it again, and we get Sanctity of Battle. Normally Sanctity of Battle is Holy Fire and Hammer of Wrath, but in this case we can trigger or benefit from Arcane Barrage. With the new stuff, Divine Concord, so Art of War now, instead of Exorcism, reduce the cast time of Arcane Blast and increase the damage, and it will now trigger the Sanctity of Battle. So normally it would be Exorcism triggering Sanctity of Battle, but now instead it would be Arcane Blast, making us can use all the arcane stuff. So Divine Concord has some benefit with Avenging Wrath and Guardian. It will get into that later, but right now the important thing is the Arcane Crusade. So beforehand this would benefit Exorcism. Now it benefits Arcane Barrage and Arcane Missiles. I can't really seem to fit in Arcane Missiles. It just doesn't seem that worth compared to just casting a very big Arcane Barrage with increased chance for the Missile Barrage. And Missile Barrage just seems a bit better to get. The Arcane Explosion is just for AoE. The other part of the build is that we get the Missile Barrage from Arcane Mage. Normally the way we would use this is that Arcane Missiles just has like a very fast channel time. In this case we have a new talent called Arcanesworn. So our Arcanesworn makes the Paladin abilities consume this effect and trigger Arcanesworn. So let's take a look. Let's see if we can get a proc. So here we have the Missile Barrage, but instead of consuming it with Arcane Missiles, we just want to press Crusader Strike, and it consumes it, and it will give us a damage proc called Arcanesworn. This proc is, you saw my tooltip, it's 745. Your tooltip might be different. To be fair, I actually don't know what this tooltip is based from. It scales off Crusader Strike modifiers, but I don't... so now suddenly it got to 370, before it was 700. I don't know what the tooltip changes from, but doesn't really matter. Anyway, it's a damage proc and reduce the cooldown of Avenging Wrath. That's basically it. It's very good damage, and we just want to consume as many missile barrages as possible instead of using them with arcane missiles as normal. And with that, let's talk about Avenging Wrath. So Avenging Wrath is a level 70 ability. You can only get this in TBC, and that's also why I could only make this build now. So Avenging Wrath, we want to reduce the cooldown with this, and Avenging Wrath just increase all our holy abilities with 15%. It's a lot of like just good damage. We had the talent before Divine Concord, so it also said something with Avenging Wrath. It makes it so our seal, the Arcane Seal, will now have increased damage, and so do the Arcane Barrage. So Arcane Barrage will just hit for a lot, like for me 40k, and it can probably go a lot higher, and also increase the chance of triggering Missile Barrage. More Missile Barrage mean lower cooldown of Avenging Wrath, means more damage, and so on, and just more uptime. The other one, this is not mandatory. This is just, I mean, it's nice to have. It's really nice to have. So while we have the Avenging Wrath on and the Guardian of Ancient Kings, basically a mini version, but we cannot reduce the cooldown of that, it will make so our Arcane Mage spells, so we use Arcane Barrage and Arcane Blast, it will, the crits of those will proc our seal and proc Righteous Vengeance. Righteous Vengeance is this talent. I don't even have it at max. It's basically like a Fire Mage Ignite, but just for Paladin stuff. So basically when we crit for 40k, 15% of that is just a lot of damage over 8 seconds. And yeah, that's basically the reason why Avenging Wrath is so important. And to fill in the uptime, we have the other version, Guardian of the Ancient Kings. For some reason, I think that's changed, but it's no longer an Avenging Wrath modifier. It's a bit weird, so whenever we don't have fully uptime on Avenging Wrath, we don't have that. Even with Hasty Avenging Wrath that I'm testing right now. And so you can basically, if you have this is just very nice to have, and you can just fill it in to have more uptime on the big damage. Another quick tip, don't make the same mistakes as I did. Avenging Wrath and Arcane Power seems like a very nice combination for this build, but they don't stack, sadly. So let's see, we have Avenging Wrath now, pressing Arcane Power, and it changes place. So Arcane Power is not a waste. We do have some downtime between our Avenging Wrath. Between those, we can just have an Arcane Power and weave between them, but yeah, don't make a macro and stack them like I did at the start. So yeah, be aware. So the most important thing I haven't talked about, and if you were thinking, HeyTrix, are you retarded? You're using arcane spells and scaling holy damage. What the hell? So we have Divine Illumination. This is from Holy Paladin, reducing mana cost, doesn't really do anything. And we have this talent called Arcane Divinity. It just completes the build basically, making all of our arcane spells both like making them divine, making them both arcane and holy. So a very important thing here I see a lot of people mistake is that it will only benefit the highest number. So if you have 5% increased arcane damage and 20% increased holy damage, you will only have 20% increased holy damage for your spells. It will not be 25, it will not be a combination, it will just be the highest number. So in that case, it will be 20% holy damage. It also means for the build that stuff like, so like this, it will be 6% increased arcane damage, but if your increase to holy damage is higher, this will basically be useless. And you can see here, holy power will give increased holy damage. There are different stuff that like vengeance that will give increased holy damage like this. So increased bonus to holy damage. I chose to stack holy damage. Possibly you could also stack arcane damage instead, go into Moonkin, stuff like that. For me, it seems like there was just more reason to be holy damage, so that is what I went with. The other part of this is that this is a 1.5 minute cooldown. How we are managing that is we're dealing damage with all the arcane spells, and a new thing that was recently added, Crusader Strike, Divine Storm, and Judgment extended by 2 seconds. This makes it so we have a lot uptime on Divine Illumination. Basically, whenever we refresh it, we have 8 seconds left, so a lot of time. Keep in mind for dungeons, this is a fine build, but it's kinda hard to have uptime on Divine Illumination, making the build a bit harder to play. You can fix this in the Mystic Enchants a bit, but it's still a bit hard. So besides making all of our spells divine, like Holy and Arcane, we also have this talent. This is nice to have. This was the last talent I got in order to get the damage numbers I was at. So basically 40% spell crit. I'm sitting at 80-90% spell crit. So very strong talent. It's like the last talent you should probably get for the build. So keep that in mind. But yeah, this combination, you also need that for the build. It's what makes everything work and makes it like benefit from all of your holy damage. For the last 2 talents, one of them is not new. It was just changed to also work with Arcanesworn. Another reason why we try to min-max how many missile barrage procs we get. And this just is a lot of damage. Like, I'm very surprised. Normally these would be very low, but this is actually a lot of our damage. It's, yeah, get this talent, very strong. Not mandatory. It's a nice to have, but a lot of damage. The other one, Blade of the Magisters. Better to just show it. It works like Mongoose Fury from retail, maybe other things. The important for this buff is that it doesn't refresh. So you have to like play around the uptime and getting most out of your abilities. Like, should you try to just stack in Paladin abilities, pumping up the stacks. So now it's 8 stacks. It's almost 100% increased damage for mage spells, but you will just not have like a lot of time left. So the other way to just do it is that get a few stacks, get it like stacked up, and then get some benefits, and you're still like, oh, now we have a missile barrage, so now we are getting the stacks up again. Judgment almost off cooldown, we can get the stacks up, and 3 seconds left, so we can probably just get 1 arcane blast and 1 arcane barrage out. It's tricky to play with. It makes the rotation quite fun actually. It makes the rotation a bit random. Sometimes, as you see here, we got the missile barrage. Sometimes we don't get it, but yeah, it makes the rotation a bit random. I haven't seemed to find a way to make a cast sequence yet because of the randomness, but it also makes it fun. So let's get into the missing talent, missing abilities, what I'm consider rerolling. This is still theory crafting and a work in progress, because everything is new and there's not much information out of this. If I'm sounding a bit different, I'm basically in the middle of catching a cold and getting sick, I feel. So bear with me. For abilities and talent, for the mana of the build, we're spending a lot of mana on the Arcane Blast and stuff. The most of the mana fix is coming from Spellblade. You can also use the Judgement of Wisdom. This will give mana. And Judgment of the Wise will also give mana. I would say only need one of these, just whatever you get. I think the Spellblade is slightly better. I don't know if you need the weave melee attacks in between caster spells. I don't think so. Maybe with the Arcane Missile if it gets better, not sure. Master of Elements, it's not much refund because we're already reducing the mana cost by a lot from Divine Illumination. Other notable talents, Twin Discipline scales very well, especially if you have the Divine Illumination, making arcane spells holy, insane talent, all that is right, basically increasing your seal damage. Speaking of sealed, the Dark Justica and Twist of Fate is basically stance swapping. Let me show. So right now I have the seal on me. Whenever I press Seal of Vengeance, I'm basically getting a buff of the other one. And whenever I hit stuff, I should, putting Seal Holy Vengeance on. And also, details is bugged, but you get the idea. So now I would press this back. And now the other one would become an aura. And the other one would become my seal. So you basically do this seal swapping and getting benefit of both of them. I think that would be the optimal play. And especially whenever you use your judgment, you will basically pop all of the Seal of Vengeance with the Dark Justica, doing big damage, because you also have 200% increased damage. I didn't use this, but it would probably be worth looking for. There's also some other stuff that would basically benefit Seal of Vengeance. This one increases damage of paladin abilities, so a lot of stuff will benefit from this. Benefit from crit, haste. The other thing, Consecrated Weapon. I don't know, there should be... So this one, Consecrated Strikes, together with Consecrated Weapon, is basically 10% more strength from 2 talents, and some damage proc, and some more weapon damage proc. I think these are very good, look out for them. Purification of Light. Also more holy procs, and we're scaling a lot of holy damage. The rest is basically 3% damage. I don't know if we have a decent enough slow to proc this, but if you have, I think this is very good. It's basically 9% more damage, very strong, but I'm not sure if I can proc it. For stances, I guess any stance works. I think the best one would be Twisted Mind. The Demonic Mind could also be very good, specifically for the crit if you're not crit capped or close to 100%, because crit is very good for the build. So let's go into rapid rolling and we can see what stuff we don't have. For the Holy Fire, we have a nice thing for basically most paladin builds. So Crusader Strike will reduce the cast time of Holy Fire. Just give us a free instacast Holy Fire to weave in the rotation. The benefit of doing this in an Arcane Paladin build is Divine Prophet, so dealing damage with Arcane Blast and Arcane Barrage will now also increase the damage of Holy Fire, so we're actually getting some very, very big Holy Fires in the build. One talent I look for in the start, Illuminating Light. We're really not needing this. If you get it, it's fine, but it would most be for dungeons where we have low uptime on it. Maybe for heavy movement fights, stuff like that, but it's really not needed. Mana Reeve, whenever you get all the other mana abilities, this is very much not needed. Other talent, this one I don't think is very good for this build. We're not casting Exorcism, Hammer of Wrath really. Powerful Divine Storm, I think this would be good because Arcanesworn scales of Divine Storm modifiers. I don't know if it scales of both of them. I would assume so, but not sure. I will leave it in the comments if I remember. The other stuff, Thunder Soul talked about with the Battlemage, very, very good. Keep a lookout. So Power Overwhelming, not as good as I thought because Avenging Wrath and Arcane Power doesn't overlap, but look out for that. Just to fill in the gaps. Harnessed Energy, I think this would only be 10% increased damage. Like right now, you also can see it here. So we're getting out of war. There we go. Casting Arcane Blast. Next Arcane spell is 15% increased damage. So Arcane Barrage here, procced it, had 15% increased damage. So it would basically make it from 15% to 25% in my understanding. So not that beneficial, but 10% increased damage, I guess. Take it. If you see it, you can take it. Hammered in. I think this is a just nice damage proc with holy damage. If you see it, I think it's fine. Never tested it, so not sure. Seal of Vengeance, talked about that if we're gonna use the seal swapping. And yeah, look out for Astral Mind. I think we can have decent uptime on this with arcane stuff. And that would be it for what I'm looking for abilities. For random enchants, I'm using one Divine Illumination. I don't think this is worth it anymore. I used it at the start whenever I was testing and I didn't have the fully built. It's nice if you're in like a dungeon, there's some mobility, and if you use this build for dungeons, I would suggest getting more of these and the hasty one for reduced cooldown. The hasty Avenging Wrath seems very good in my opinion. I'm sad it doesn't give more cooldown reduction, but I think it's fine. And the other ones are crit chance for holy spells, damage for holy spells, and just holy damage abilities, increased damage. And the spell impact, so 2% increased damage. These ones I'm not sure about. Maybe seal damage is better. Most of our damage is coming from Arcane Blast, Arcane Barrage, so right now it seems good. And Raw Light, one of the most crazy random enchants. When you have Divine Illumination, the buff, you get 4% spell crit. So this is 12 total spell crit. So this is where most of our spell crit is coming from. And 2% crit chance because we're dual wielding. Here in the background you can see some damage on AoE scenario. The AoE scenario is a bit scuffed because Divine Illumination and Avenging Wrath is a bit to have fully uptime on it in dungeons because you're running around, specifically Divine Illumination. Maybe for higher keys it could actually be a very, very good build. I think the Arcanesworn, since it's free target hit and the extra Arcane Explosion, there's some very good potential. Also with Heart of the Crusader from Judgement and just having very high increased damage from Judgement, I think there's some very good potential there. I did test this in a dungeon and it seems to have good damage. Right now the heroic dungeons are like, mobs are dying very quick, so it's hard to tell, but from my testing so far it's very fun. And then also having the fun rotation on bosses, it's a good time so far. If you plan on rolling the build right now, these are the level 1 starter builds I would recommend. The top 3, very mandatory, wouldn't change them for a bit. The the 4th ability, either Enslave Demon or Tether Elemental. This is in the PvE scenario. If you're doing PvP, I don't know, Power of the Elemental. For the other elemental, 5% increased damage or decreased damage taken. The Enslave Demon one is a bit better. It's basically the same for Felguard or Enslave Demon. But when you use the Demonic Knowledge, you also get some increased spell power from your demon if you choose to have this talent. I don't know if there's space for this talent, but it's something to keep in mind. And often the enslaved demons have some pretty crazy pets, so that's also something to keep in mind. So for cards and how to level the build, there is one big issue. The 2 most important abilities is level 60. So what I would card is basically these 3. If you have them in golden cards, prioritize that. But yeah, you will basically just have to level it as a basic paladin build. For paladin to be very strong, you don't need much. You can either consider Flame Tongue Weapon, but I would also say it's way better to just see if you can roll it later on and save the card. The more cards you have at the end, the better. I'm not gonna dive much into that. Same goes for the other abilities. Arcanesworn, Missile Barrage, is you basically cannot trigger these, so you basically cannot level as an Arcane Mage. So you will basically just have to level as a normal Paladin. One with the light, I'm pretty sure you're able to get this. I will link it the Discord in the description where to find the legendaries. But this one legendary can basically carry you most of the leveling. If you want to and have maybe have easier leveling, you can card some of the consecrated weapon, consecrated strikes. I think these are decent. But yeah, the name of the game right now is a bit unfortunate somehow, but you should really just have the most open slots. So when you finish rolling the build, you just have the most flex slots to roll your build afterwards. This is basically the meta. But since the baseline of the build is a paladin build, It's basically one of the strongest leveling with just Divine Storm, Crusader Strike, a Sealed, and one with the Light. So it's kind of one of the fastest builds to level, and then also one of the best to roll because you have so many empty slots. That would be the end of the video. I will show the build again and the rotation I'm currently doing. I hope I don't get sick, else I probably won't spam videos out, even though I would about to have a week off, so it's kind of bad timing, so fingers crossed. I will try to get this build in the Hero Architect. If you see it there, and maybe even if you use it, make sure to upvote it. We really want as many Paladin builds on top of the Hero Architect, so if the server didn't already, everyone played Paladin builds, let's make sure that everyone will. And yeah, that will be it. Ascension also seems to be in a bit of decline when it comes to views and attention on Ascension videos. So normally I wouldn't ask, but if you watch it to the end of the video, thanks a lot. Make sure to like and subscribe so the video will get shown to more in the algorithm. And again, the same principle, we should make sure that everyone on this server sees this video and the player base, just everyone starts playing Paladin. So yeah, let's just share this build and have everyone play Paladin, because why not? Thanks for watching.